Most families avoid the aging conversation, not because they don't care, but because of what it might mean. Families are consistently scared about having these conversations. But interestingly, they're not actually afraid of having the same conversation about finances and legal preparation. Every family I have ever met or worked with has known that they needed to have one of these conversations. And a lot of them hesitate, not because they don't care about their parents, not because they don't care about their kids, but because it's a really heavy conversation and it can bring a lot of things up as they're having it. So they avoid it. They're not in denial. These families do not avoid these conversations because they're irresponsible. They don't avoid them because they're in denial. Instead, it is an avoidance of certain topics that are very uncomfortable to have. Talking about loss, talking about death, talking about not having your parent around, talking about identity and reality and facing what comes next can be an incredibly difficult prospect. What they're actually doing is confronting the reality that life is not going to stay as it is forever. It's a little like the ostrich with their head in the sand, where if I can't see it, it doesn't exist and I'm going to be okay. That really doesn't prevent the aging process. And the truth is that silence doesn't actually protect you from anything. It just delays the planning that can protect your choices later. So a lot of families do avoid this conversation. It can mean a lot of different things. Some people are just overwhelmed, don't necessarily feel like they have the time to do it. But when you get to those crises moments, it's really important that you did have the conversation. And I've talked about this before of how important it is to have the conversation in a low stress environment where you don't have to make the decision today, but you can actually engage in a conversation towards resolution over the course of a couple of weeks. Now, there are some families that like to sit at a table, have a family meeting, and come to resolution together. And I love those families. I really wish that a lot of families had that ability to sit down together, come up with a plan, and then work the plan afterwards. But not every family works like that. Greg's family does, my family doesn't, and that's okay. We can work with both of those types of families. I think that there are a lot of fears that drive this avoidance. Most of the fears have to do with prior attempts at these conversations or families who are in conflict. There is a huge population that are in estranged relationships, not just those that have chosen to separate themselves from their parents, but those who have been cut out of their parents' lives. This can make those types of conversations incredibly difficult, not necessarily with the parent who is estranged from you, but also with your siblings because you're not on a level playing field. So there's so much emotion, there's so much history that comes into some of these conversations. Again, not all families are like this. Greg's family is not like this. There's not a lot of emotional baggage that they need to work through in order to have some of these tough conversations. But there are some other things too. There can be differences in religious beliefs. I think I've mentioned before that we live in um, we live in a multi-generational home where there are different spiritual beliefs among our family, which can make some of these conversations a little bit more difficult because there are strongly held beliefs on both sides and they may not agree. But when you are not able to have these conversations because of the fears, whether that is your parents' fears or your children's fears, it really decreases your ability to have choices and options moving forward through the aging process. When you're not able to move forward, it becomes a reactive endeavor. So this causes families to see that the warning signs, the signs saying that an exit is coming, 12 miles down the road. If you don't notice those signs because you're pretending like this is not happening, you don't want to see what's going on, you actually will miss those warning signs that are popping up on the road as you are flying past at 60 miles an hour. So those warning signs are actually giving you the opportunity to ensure that your family is ready without having to wait for crisis. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about how I spent a lot of time on the floor with the sandwich generation who are crying on the floor because they don't have a plan. And now they are left with this really heavy situation. There is a parent in the bed and they are so lost. Our goal is to look at those warning signs, see them coming more frequently as we are driving down the road of life, and being able to take a little pit stop off and start to make a plan for this trip that we're going on, whether we want to or not. Planning like that is why we have financial planners in place. We know that we need to start saving well into our 20s. Like we should be thinking about retirement so early in life that we're not even sure who we are yet. It's the same thing with planning for aging. We should be starting this journey at the very beginning so that we are able to see the warning signs. We've already got a plan for that. I'm good. We're going to drive past. We've already got gas in the car. We don't need to stop for gas. Those types of things reduce the mental load and provide opportunities for your family to move quickly through life, knowing that there is no contingency that doesn't have a plan. So let's talk a minute about what is required for independence. There are two different stages of independence. There is the steadfast independent that truly is truthfully independent. They are doing everything independently. They are able to plan ahead. They're able to grocery shop. They're able to take care of their physical body. They are making it to their appointments independent of any outside help. They can live alone. They are financially independent, and they truly don't need anybody. We as adults should be in that space. The second level of independence is the supported independent. That is when you start needing outside help to continue to maintain your independence, whether that is because you have a broken leg and you need some rehabilitation, or you just don't have the lung capacity to go grocery shopping anymore. We are finding ways to support that independent person in their home, in the lifestyle that they are accustomed to, just with some light intervention. So independence is not just a set it and forget it as we talked about 2 weeks ago. We have to provide at some point some interventions to maintain independence. And that is one of the first little road signs that people miss. Instead of putting those structures or setting up those structures before it is needed, a lot of people wait until people actually should be in the collaborative partner stage where they are needing significant interventions, where if we had intervened earlier, perhaps we could have them staying in their home longer. We could have perhaps caught some of these things earlier, and we would have set them up for success before they reached that point. This is the biggest regret that families express to me, is that they are reaching out to me when everything feels incredibly dark, when there doesn't seem to be any hope and they are lost. Not because they haven't started to do some of the work, but because those structures and systems are not in place. They don't know what the next step is. They've done as much as they know how to do, but they're reaching out to me in crisis. And that is a moment where not a lot of planning can happen. We have already missed the window of opportunity, and now we're in crisis mitigation mode. This is the biggest regret that I see for most families, is that once you realize what a crisis actually looks and feels like, you wish you had done something earlier to perhaps prevent yourself from being so lost in this situation. So those sandwich generation people that are sitting on the floor ugly crying in the hospital are not just crying over the loss or the impending loss of their parent. They are crying because they feel so out of control. Whereas if we start early enough, just like we do with our financial planning, we know what our runway looks like. We know how much is in the bank, and we know what we need to do to step it up because we're not going to meet our retirement goals. You can have the same level of confidence in planning for the aging adult if you start early enough. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are doing the makeup contributions or trying to catch up, and it can be done, but it absolutely is harder than starting in your 20s and 30s to save for retirement. This is where those choices start disappearing. If you do not know what your parents' financial future looks like, it is very difficult to be able to make those plans when you are in the midst of a crisis. Being involved in their insurance decisions, such as what Medicare supplement they have or what Medicare Advantage program that they are involved in, you can know what your options are. There are some Medicare Advantage plans that do not cover rehabilitation in the way that you think that they would. Most of them also do not cover if the only need is assistance with activities of daily living. So, like getting up and off the toilet or brushing your teeth. That type of care is not typically covered by some of the medical plans out there. If you don't know this, then the crisis that your parent is in gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you are faced with smaller and smaller decisions because you didn't know the information. Again, this is not a failure of love. This is not a failure of um, anything outside of not starting early enough to know these problems. For instance, when Don and Sandy were going through their Medicare Advantage enrollment period, we talked about which insurances I had seen that would cover the things that I knew as a healthcare provider, what would be important in the case of any type of these falls or illnesses or things like that. I also knew which health system they covered so that I knew that they would be going and be able to be at the healthcare system that I was most comfortable with and I knew provided the best care. But those choices disappear when you are not involved in those discussions earlier. Now, my in laws live with us, so it's important that I know these things. But again, we are planners. They don't need me to be involved in these decisions right now, but we choose for me to be involved so that if there is something that happens, like a fall and a broken hip, a heart attack, or a stroke, I know what we have already set up in place, and I know where this coverage will cover in the event of an emergency. So, aging readiness is really much more about maintaining choices, knowing the information before it is necessary so that there are no surprises down the road. Being able to have that information in the same way that you look through your insurance plan and you have your quarterly or annual check-in with your financial planner, you are able to have these checkpoints where you understand what is happening in order to be able to give your family the most stable base to be able to take care of the aging population. So early planning truly changes the outcome because you're not the sandwich generation sitting on the ground in the hospital ugly crying at 2 a.m. because your mom can't go to any of the good nursing homes in the entire county and has to be sent 2 hours away to a nursing facility in a different city because that's the only one that's covered by her Advantage plan. But you know exactly what needs to happen. You know which hospital to take them to or to tell the ambulance to take them to. You already have their doctors in place. You have a structure that holds your family. It gives you options so that you know that you can face anything that comes because you already have the information in front of you. You've already talked about wishes. You've already negotiated boundaries. For instance, whether or not you are physically able to provide physical care for your parents, that's something that should be negotiated well in advance of needing it. Because if you wait until you have to make that decision in crisis, most of the time you are going to not be able to hold a boundary that you feel very passionately about. The most important conversation, I believe, is where are we in the aging process? This one can be kind of tough because usually the people who are experiencing the life think that they are more confident and more competent than they actually are. Those of us who are helping to look at them in their life almost always assume that they are doing worse than they are. So, finding a clear tool that allows you to establish where in this aging journey we are is a really important conversation and a piece to have, because what you're going to do as far as interventions depends on where you are in the aging process. And if you don't know, it's kind of like being lost at the mall. Do you remember malls? So when I was a kid, huge deal, amazing. But every time you walked in the door, there was a big, huge map of the mall, and there was a big yellow dot on it, sometimes circled in red with the words, "You are here." And you knew exactly where you were in the mall. And that allowed you to orient yourself. Same thing. That is the number one most important conversation. We have to know where we are, not just for your parents as a unit, but individually, where are they on the aging journey, so that you can provide those interventions that are appropriate for their level of aging. Some people might be actually further along in the journey, and there's a little bit of makeup work that we might need to do together. But knowing that is the most important conversation that you can have. So this month, August, is a really important month for us to be able to start this process. I think that getting down into the fall and the planning, I am a gardener. I love gardening. And what I start thinking about in the fall is, what am I going to plant in the spring? And so I think this is a great opportunity for families to spend some time together. Most families have planned vacations over the holidays together. You're going to have some time in the same space where you can have some of these conversations, but planning them ahead of time, having the resources together so that you're able to have a productive conversation, and just opening it in a non-threatening way over the holidays can really provide the beginning of a conversation. So I think fall is a fantastic time to get started. And if you need help, please let me know, because I am here to help you.